holistic health practitioner, and I've been involved in cardiovascular health for over 10 years. And I've recently expanded my practice to include gut health and discovering root causes of disease. My practice, the Cardio Wellness Group, uses ancient technologies and modern science to help you really optimize your health. We focus on increasing your energy, mental clarity, and well being using our tri level approach of meals, mind, and movement. When it comes to our business, we really like to help others to create programs and give new ideas to help our clients and the general public being able to really discover just a new way to feel better all the time. And that's where Tiffany Olszuk comes in. And she's an amazing health and wellness coach. But what is so cool about her is where she draws her inspiration and helps her clients come from. She really has been fascinated by dolphins and marine life conservation for really as long as she can remember. And she encourages people to take a joyful approach to working towards their ideal wellness vision. And she specializes in something that I think we all need to focus on. Because I know for me, even there were times when my business is going really, really strong, I work really hard. I work all day, I make dinner, and then I get back to the computer and work some more. And you know what that causes? It's burnout. And Tiffany really specializes in helping people feel like their best, highest, and most radiant self. And that's what we're going to focus on today is we're going to ask just a few questions and find out about her passions and her methods. So I would like to welcome you, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me.
This is so cool, so cool. So I'm curious, what made you open your wellness practice?
Yeah, so I just started not too long ago. So I was in corporate for 10 years before I decided to be an entrepreneur. And so I was doing a combination of project management and communications. And my goal at the time was really to do as much as I could to keep climbing the ladder and be as successful as possible. And I was successful. But what I found is the harder I pushed and the more I pushed to sort of fit myself into the corporate mold, the less authentic I became to my true self. And that caused so much stress, so much so that my body started speaking loudly. So anything from hives to panic attacks, I knew I had to make a switch. And so I've always been very passionate about wanting to help others and the healthcare field in general. And so I got my health coaching certificate and opened my wellness practice. And I think, yeah, I've drawn a lot of inspiration from nature and sort of trying to craft it.
Yeah, and it's I think that's one of the reasons that we connected so quickly is because I'm the same way. Being able to walk out in the grass and just barefoot and put my your feet in the grass. But you take a lot of your inspiration from the sea. I love the name of your company, Purposeful Wellness. How did that come about?
Yeah, yeah. So that one goes back a little bit. So you mentioned in the intro that I've always been inspired by nature, and I've always been inspired by the ocean in particular. I think it's its calming qualities and why people flock to the ocean to relax or read a book, or some people do spiritual practices at the ocean. So I've always been fascinated by why, but I also have been fascinated by marine life too. So the business name really came about, I think, when I met my now husband. We were dating and we were at a dolphin cove on vacation, and I kept watching dolphins swim by. I could have watched them all day. Just it was like this magnetic quality. And so he kind of like elbowed me and joked, and he was like, I think dolphins are like your spirit animal. Like, you're so into this. And it kind of stuck with me. And so when I was looking at names for my business, I looked up dolphins, and they actually represent peace, balance, and harmony. And so those are exactly the kind of qualities that I want to bring to people when I work with them, especially when they're stressed out. And so that was definitely one inspiration. But the other one is the pun, purposeful. I want to help people have the most impactful, fulfilled lifestyles that they can. And so having purpose and direction is definitely part of that. And so it kind of just came together. It felt like a good match.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And you mentioned about the sea having calming effects, and so many people go to the coasts to relax and get away and find their center, right?
Absolutely.
And really that using that as an inspiration is just absolutely so magnificent. But you add something else to your practice too. So I know for me, my practice is a tri-level approach of meals, mind, and movement. And you specifically talk about movement, and not only general movement, but you've also talked about dance. Can you tell me how does that come into play?
Yeah, I think dance has always been one of those things for me that I've been drawn to. So I was never enrolled in dance classes. I just always used it as a way to kind of release stress. And so that kind of stuck with me recently. So I started choreographing classes. I'm also a Zumba instructor. So I drew some inspiration from Zumba and bar and Pilates and put it all together in one class. And I started seeing how much this style of movement was resonating with people. Like the energy in the room in these classes was so great, and people felt so good after. And so I'm starting to see and integrate more and more in my practice how movement, somatic dance really is more like free flow style movement and just being able to release that stress. So it's kind of like the concept of, you put on your favorite song and you're just dancing it out for a few minutes, or you're in your car and you want to like sing at the top of your lungs because your favorite song is on. It's sort of like that feeling where you can go from really stressed out or just like scattered to suddenly feeling really good. And so I think in my practice, I'm sort of studying the why. Like, why is it that movement helps people do that? And so far, I think it's a lot about it's getting your heart rate up, it's getting your body temperature up, it's getting you out of your head and in your body and listening to what is my body saying to me. And so I think there's so much with movement that can really help transform the way we feel. And so I like to bring that to my clients, but I also draw inspiration from Irish dance as well, because I just started a few years ago with my sister, and it's something we get to do together. And so just drawing inspiration from all styles of dance, and especially the somatic dance that helps you release all that tension that we could be carrying around.
That's so true. And when you sing to the music, I think it was Saint Andrew that said, when you sing you pray twice. And it really gives you a feeling of peace when you're singing and moving and dancing. And you mentioned your heart rate goes up, you get better circulation. It actually, believe it or not, I read where it reduces cholesterol.
Wow, I'll have to look into that one. I believe that. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So movement is so important. And I know for me, most of my clients say, "Oh, but I don't have time to join the gym," or "I don't like to lift weights," or I want to spend more time with my family. And the thing is, when you incorporate play, which you mentioned, dance play, or just turning on music, you can include your family with that. Um, I I had a client once um, that was his thing. Is like, oh well, I feel guilty. I feel guilty if I play with my son, that I'm not working out, and I feel guilty when I'm working out because I'm not spending time with my family. So we just looked at his lifestyle and incorporated being able to do that by taking his 3-year-old to the park and playing with him and being with him. And it made such a difference in his attitude, his health, all of it.
That's such a great
So,
it's such a great point about not only including those around you and the relationships you have, but it doesn't have to be. I think sometimes when I say movement and I describe dance, like it could be people could kind of shut down, like, I'm not a dancer, or, I already exercise, or exercise in itself is a triggering term. But I've read studies recently that there's a Stockholm study out of the train station in Stockholm, that the people that were taking the stairs instead of the elevator out of the train station were actually happier than the people in the elevator. And so I'm like, it doesn't even have to be like I'm gonna go for a run or I'm gonna do a whole dance workout. It's like it's simple as like walking up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Really can kind of lift your mood a little bit, or going outside to play with your kids. And so I think it's the small things that add up for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned also about slowing down, and and not being so, I guess, focused, so like a laser on what you're doing, but being able to break away and just take a breath and slow down. Um,
Absolutely.
how do your clients respond to that?
Yeah, I think because I work with people that are very motivated, very driven, it can be really hard because, like myself, they want to get to those goals. They want to climb the corporate ladder or whatever their goals are. And I think at first it's like, well, how am I going to do that? And so for me, it's about kind of I might do like a visualization with my client and see where they want to be. What does it look like to take a step towards that goal? um, it's just breaking it down into smaller pieces. And so I might recommend doing small things to recenter. So for example, one of my friends was telling me how scattered they were at work the other day, and they were texting me like, I just can't focus today. And it was a nice day. So I'm like, this is going to sound silly, but go outside and put your feet in the grass. Like, put your feet on the ground and see how you feel. And they were kind of laughing about it, but they did it and they said they felt better. And then there's science behind these things. There's such small things you can do, but trying to find time, just a few minutes to step outside and feel the sun on your face, or you know, listen to your favorite song, or it's just finding a few minutes, but also figuring out what's going to work for that client. I could say all the things in the world, like try this, try that, but um, I have to understand kind of where that client is coming from too. And so I think a lot of the time, busy people are going to be like, how am I going to find time for that? And so it's sort of breaking it down and helping them see what's possible.
Right, right. It reminds me really of reading a book. You can read page after page after page, and pretty soon you're not really even paying attention
Right. Mm-hmm.
what's on the page, right? And until you stop for a moment and go back to it, and then you have more clarity and you can remember what happened, and then make a conscious decision. That's what I find, for myself at least, is that if I get stuck and I can't figure out an ending, or I can't figure out what comes next, I just walk away from it.
Yeah,
And that can make you feel guilty sometimes.
yeah, it's sort of that. And I've experienced this in corporate where it's like, oh, I'm not going to make that deadline if I step away, or I have to, this feeling of having to be glued to your desk from 9 to 5. When in reality, stepping outside or stepping away to do something you know that's going to fill up your cup is actually more beneficial, like you mentioned, because you're coming back to your desk with more clarity and just a fresher perspective. And so absolutely. I think that's a challenge for the clients that I work with, but also I remember clearly what that's like in my corporate life.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes the answer comes when you're away from it too. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, yes. You look at something totally different. I mean, sometimes I'll have a conversation with my kids and I'm like, yeah, that's the answer.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, for me, I think when I'm dancing, sometimes that happens where I'm like, oh yeah. Or even the amount of times that's happened when I walk my dog, just because I'm away from my workspace and I'm trying to tune in more to him or just the surroundings. And so yeah, it definitely, the light bulb moments happen when you step away sometimes.
So I have a question for you. How do you know if you're in burnout? Because sometimes it's hard to recognize.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's a spectrum of burnout, and I think when you're sort of in the thick of it, it's hard, like you said, to recognize. And so in my case, I started noticing what I thought were just mysterious kind of illnesses or mysterious things happen, like breaking out in hives. I'm like, oh, that's random. Maybe the dog brought that from outside.
Right.
Reality, it wasn't random. It was my body and my nervous system kind of saying like, hey, listen to us. So I guess one of the signs could be, you know, if things like that are happening to you where you're like, I feel like I'm getting sick a lot more, or, you know, just random, what seemingly random things are popping up, I would definitely tune into that. Or maybe you're the type of person that likes to work out a lot and your workouts are not as good. You'd feel like they're not as good and you're plateauing, or um, you're feeling like at the end of the day, at the end of your work day, you can't unwind. Like you're just like, no matter what I do, all the things I used to do, I used to read or go outside or work out, none of those things are really hitting anymore. And then the other thing that I've seen, people try to I guess disconnect from their reality. So if they are feeling stressed, they might go to something like binge watching Netflix, and that's not actually recharging them. That's just helping them disconnect from that feeling of being stressed. And so if you find yourself like, you know, grabbing the TV remote and being like, this isn't really filling up my cup, I don't feel very energized by this anymore. That's another sign. So I think it's so different for everyone, but I think what I try to help people with is starting to listen to those subtle signs on their mind body connection. So one of the things you can do that is with exercise or movement, but also um, having these little practices during the day where, like a gratitude practice, you write down three things you're grateful
Mm.
for. Just in that 3 minutes you're taking to do that, you're actually allowing your body to rest and do one thing, and you're focusing on something positive. So even in that time where you're allowing your body to rest, you might notice things about your body like, hey, like something's off, or I'm not feeling great today, or something. So it's sort of finding those moments to pause and listen before it kind of spirals and you get to the situation I was in where you're like, okay, now I'm starting to have bigger issues I'm dealing with. So it's definitely different for everyone, but yeah, it can be challenging when you're so motivated and so driven.
Absolutely. And the additional challenge is if you don't handle your burnout and you continue in the path, there's so many times then people have so many health issues, um, that you know they can develop cardiovascular disease, they can have a stroke or a heart attack, because the stress just increases and increases and increases until the body says, I'm done.
Yeah,
Just done.
yes. And I think that was part of the reason for my pivot. I saw people around me in corporate having to leave because they were already ill and having these things pop up. And so many of these diseases and things that you mentioned are from inflammation and stress. And so if we stop that cycle now, then we can prevent so much later.
Yes, and how great for you that you recognized it in time, and that not only you did that, but you also are going the extra step and helping other people who may are going down the same path that you were going down.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So how do people tell, well, tell me what's next for you?
Yeah, so I am actually just started a podcast, and so it's called Dancing to the Rhythm Within, and it's on Apple and Spotify, and my trailer's up right now, and so it's going to hit more on these mind body connection and things that you can do to slow down and start to recognize those signs before these higher levels of stress come on or these illnesses come on, and so we're going to have different experts on, and then also we're going to be talking about our purpose and direction. And so I'm so excited about that. And yeah, just keep growing my programs on LinkedIn. So I'd love to connect with anyone here on LinkedIn or on Instagram. My handle is at Porpoiseful Wellness. And my website is porpoisefulwellness.com.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I so appreciate you coming on today, And Tiffany, is there any last minute suggestion or idea that you can leave our guest with?
Yeah, I actually wrote this down for myself yesterday. I literally wrote down when in doubt, dance. And so even if you're like, I don't dance, put on the 2 minutes, dance it out and see how you feel afterwards. So if you're finding yourself scattered or stressed throughout the day, see how that can really uplift your mood. And if it's not dance, try to find the thing that you can take 2 to 3 minutes to do and see how your mindset changes.
That's great. Thank you so much for being a guest here
Thank
today on Your Health Matters. And we want to help anyone with any health challenges that they have, or, if they're burnt out, please get in contact with Tiffany, and she'll give you some good tips and techniques and help you get through that process. So, everyone, have a great day. And thanks again, Tiffany.
you so much.